She was an athlete, a scholar, and a dreamer. Kelty Byrne possessed a vibrant spirit that radiated outward, touching everyone she met. Born and raised in British Columbia, Canada, the ocean was practically in her blood. She excelled at swimming, spending countless hours honing her skills, slicing through the water with an effortless grace that turned heads at every meet. But her passion extended far beyond competitive sports. Kelty harbored a deep fascination with the marine world, a burning curiosity to understand the intricate ecosystems and the magnificent creatures that called the ocean home. This led her to pursue marine biology at the University of Victoria, where she quickly distinguished herself as a bright and dedicated student, devouring every textbook, eagerly participating in every field trip, and spending countless hours researching the mysteries of the deep. For Kelty, marine biology wasn't just a field of study, it was a calling. She dreamed of contributing to ocean conservation, of protecting the delicate balance of marine life, and of inspiring others to appreciate the wonders that lay beneath the waves. And that is why, when she landed a part-time job at Sealand of the Pacific, it felt like destiny had finally arrived. Sealand, nestled on the picturesque coastline of British Columbia, was a seemingly idyllic marine park, floating in the waters just off the shore. It boasted panoramic views and the star attractions that were three magnificent orcas, Tilikum Haida 2 and Nootka 4. For Kelty, it was an unparalleled opportunity to work up close and personal with these apex predators, to learn about their behavior, their needs, and their individual personalities. It was more than just a job. It was a chance to fulfill her lifelong dream. But beneath the cheerful facade and the captivating performances, a darker reality lurked. Sealand was far from a perfect paradise for these intelligent, social creatures. The orcas, particularly Tilikum, carried the heavy burden of their past, captured from their families in the wild and confined to a relatively small, man-made environment. Tilikum, a massive male, bore the physical scars of captivity, including prominent rake marks, evidence of the constant dominance, displays and aggression from the two female orcas, Haida 2 and Nootka 4. He was the easy target, the subordinate, in a forced social dynamic that lacked the natural complexities of a wild orcapod. Haida 2, the dominant female, exuded a palpable sense of tension. Her movements were often sharp and erratic, a stark contrast to the graceful fluidity typically associated with orcas. Nootka, the fourth, the other female, was known for her unpredictable behavior, a result of past trauma and confinement. Together, they formed a volatile trio, their frustration and suppressed instincts simmering just beneath the surface. The park itself, while seemingly charming, was a far cry from the vast open ocean these animals were born to roam. The main pool, while large by human standards, offered little space for the orcas to exercise their natural behaviors. During the day, they performed for the crowds, leaping and splashing on cue, but at night they were confined to a smaller, even more restrictive enclosure, a dark metal pen where tensions often reached a breaking point. Trainers, like Kelty, were largely unaware of the depth of the orca's psychological distress. They interacted with the animals through a lens of positive reinforcement and carefully choreographed routines, focusing on obedience and performance, without fully understanding the complexities of their emotional and social needs. The inherent risks of working with such powerful animals in a captive environment were often minimized, if not entirely ignored. Safety protocols were inadequate, and the potential for a catastrophic incident was a constant, unspoken threat. Kelty, with her unwavering optimism and genuine affection for the orcas, remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath. The surface, she believed in the park's mission, in the power of education and entertainment to inspire conservation, and in the possibility of forging a meaningful connection with these magnificent creatures. But the reality of captivity was slowly eroding the orcas' well-being, transforming them from playful performers into ticking time bombs, waiting for the opportunity to lash out. The tragedy that was about to unfold was not simply an accident. It was a direct consequence of confining these apex predators, of denying them their freedom, and of ignoring the warning signs that were screaming out from the depths of their despair. Sealand was a powder keg, and Kelty was about to spark the flame. February 20th, 1991, a seemingly ordinary day at Sealand of the Pacific, a small marine park nestled in the chilly waters of British Columbia. The last public show of the day had just wrapped up. The applause faded, the crowds dispersed, and the three resident orcas, Tilikum II and Nootka IV, were left in their familiar, confined domain. Kelty Byrne, a bright and ambitious 20-year-old marine biology student and part-time trainer, remained near the edge of the pool, preparing for a post-show interaction with the whales. She was likely carrying a bucket of fish, her mind perhaps already drifting towards her upcoming university studies. Then, in an instant, everything changed. The narrow walkway around the pool was perpetually slick with seawater and algae, a treacherous environment given the size of the animals nearby. Kelty, whether distracted or simply unlucky, lost her footing. One moment she was there, the next she was plunging into the frigid, 45-degree water of the Orca tank. The initial reaction wasn't panic. Kelty was a strong swimmer, a champion even. She'd likely taken an accidental dip before. The expectation was that she would surface, brush it off, and climb back out. The orcas, although massive, were supposedly trained and predictable. But this time, something was different. As Kelty surfaced, sputtering and reaching for the edge of the pool, Tilikum, the largest and most troubled of the three orcas, was already moving. In a swift and decisive action, he seized her in his mouth, near her foot or ankle, and dragged her beneath the surface. The immediate confusion quickly morphed into sheer terror. The other trainers, witnessing the unthinkable, frantically yelled commands, slapping the water's surface in a desperate attempt to distract the whales. But their efforts were in vain. The carefully constructed facade of control had shattered. These were no longer performing animals. They were apex predators, and Kelty was now tragically within their grasp. What followed was not a coordinated attack, but a chaotic and brutal struggle for survival. The three orcas, driven by a combination of pent-up frustration, captivity-induced aggression, and perhaps even a twisted sense of play, began to dominate Kelty. They pushed her, pulled her, and tossed her between them, preventing her from reaching the surface. Each time she managed to break free and gasp for air, they would drag her back down into the murky depths. Witness accounts paint a horrifying picture. Kelty's desperate gasps for air, the sheer terror in her eyes, the helplessness of the trainers who could only watch as their colleague was subjected to this unimaginable ordeal. There were no emergency protocols in place for such a scenario. No readily available tranquilizers, no physical barriers that could swiftly separate Kelty from the whales. The park's safety measures, already questionable, proved woefully inadequate. In the face of this unprecedented crisis, minutes stretched into an eternity. Agonizing, helpless minutes during which Kelty fought with every ounce of strength she possessed. But in that confined space, surrounded by 6 tons of predatory muscle, human strength was no match. What began as a simple slip had escalated into a fatal struggle, a terrifying dance of death that no one could stop. As the horrific reality began to sink in, the trainers desperately tried anything to intervene. They threw life rings, rescue buoys, nets, and poles, frantically attempting to distract the orcas and create an opportunity for Kelty to escape. But the whales ignored the frantic activity above the surface. Their focus remained solely on her. Then, amidst the chaos and the horror, came the most haunting moment of all. Kelty, surfacing one last time, her voice trembling with a primal fear, cried out, "I don't want to die." Those words, raw, desperate, and final, echoed across the cold water, a chilling testament to her unimaginable terror. They would be the last words anyone would ever hear from Kelty Byrne. The trainer stood frozen, paralyzed by the sheer horror of the situation. The orcas, creatures they had trained, cared for, and even loved, were now passing Kelty's limp body between them, as if engaged in some macabre game of underwater tag. Tilikum, the largest, would grip her with his powerful jaws, and then one of the females would surge in, snatch her away, dragging her deeper into the abyss. It wasn't a swift or merciful end. It was a prolonged, nightmarish struggle, lasting for more than 10 agonizing minutes. 10 minutes of suffocating, drowning, being battered, and dragged beneath the surface with no hope of escape. 10 minutes during which every lifeline thrown her way vanished beneath the weight of futility. Finally, the pool fell silent. The trainers could see Kelty's body floating motionless in the water. The orcas, seemingly exhausted from their deadly game, released her, but it was far too late. The vibrant, passionate young woman who had dedicated her life to marine life, who had believed in the beauty and grace of these magnificent creatures, had become their victim. By the time the emergency services arrived, Kelty had been underwater for far too long. There was no rescue, no miracle comeback. Her body was recovered from the pool, battered, bruised, and lifeless. A tragic testament to the unseen horrors of captivity. The trainers who had worked alongside Kelty were in a state of shock, many frozen in disbelief. The world around them was suddenly muted. Some wept uncontrollably, while others stood in a paralyzed daze, replaying those terrifying minutes over and over in their minds. They had trained these whales, they had trusted them, but the cold, brutal reality was now undeniable. The orcas had never been truly tamed, only contained. And when that containment failed, no human stood a chance. The image of Kelty Byrne's lifeless body being pulled from that tank sent shockwaves far beyond the small community of Victoria. The immediate fallout was swift and brutal. Sealand of the Pacific, once a seemingly harmless tourist attraction, became synonymous with tragedy and neglect. The idyllic facade shattered, revealing a grim reality of inadequate safety measures and a profound misunderstanding of the complex needs of these apex predators. Public outrage was immediate and intense. Protests erupted outside the park. Boycotts were organized. The once steady stream of visitors dwindled to a trickle. Sealand's owners, facing mounting pressure and devastating financial losses, had little choice but to close its doors. But shutting down the park didn't erase the events of that day, nor did it address the underlying issues of orca captivity. Instead, it simply shifted the problem elsewhere. The fate of the 3 orcas became a matter of urgent concern. What would become of these animals who had caused such devastation? Haida II and Nootka IV were eventually transferred to other marine parks, disappearing from the public eye. But it was Tilikum's journey that would prove to be the most consequential, and ultimately the most tragic. Tilikum, the largest and arguably most traumatized of the three, found himself on a one-way trip to SeaWorld Orlando. Marketed as a breeding bull, he was supposed to be the key to SeaWorld's future, the progenitor of a new generation of captive orcas. But the trauma he had endured at Sealand, the brutal confinement, the constant aggression from the other females, and the horrifying incident involving Kelty didn't simply vanish with the change of scenery. It festered. SeaWorld, despite its vastly larger scale and resources, seemed determined to ignore the warning signs. They presented Tilikum as a gentle giant, showcasing his immense size and power in carefully choreographed shows. But beneath the surface, the same dangerous dynamic was at play. Tilikum, deprived of his natural habitat and social structure, remained a ticking time bomb. The consequences of this negligence would become chillingly clear. In 1999, a man named Daniel Dukes snuck into SeaWorld after hours and ended up in Tilikum's tank. The next morning, Dukes was found dead, his body severely mutilated. SeaWorld initially dismissed the incident as a tragic accident, attributing it to hypothermia and drowning. But the extent of Duke's injuries told a different story, a story of brutal force and pent-up aggression. Still, SeaWorld continued to use Tilikum in performances. The lure of profit and entertainment outweighed the growing concerns about his well-being and the safety of the trainers. Then, on February 24, 2010, the unthinkable happened again. Dawn Bronshaw, one of SeaWorld's most experienced and respected trainers, was killed by Tilikum during a show in front of a live audience. The horrific incident, captured on video, sent shockwaves around the world. Dawn's death was a watershed moment. It forced a long overdue reckoning with the ethics of keeping orcas in captivity. The documentary Blackfish, released in 2013, meticulously dissected Tilikum's life, exposing the brutal realities of his captivity and the systemic failures that led to the deaths of Kelty and Dawn Bronshaw. The film ignited a global debate, fueling the growing movement against marine animal captivity. SeaWorld faced intense scrutiny, plummeting attendance, and mounting pressure from animal rights activists. The company eventually announced that it would end its orca breeding program and phase out its theatrical orca shows. Tilikum died in 2017, a captive until the very end. His life, marked by trauma and tragedy, became a symbol of the cruelty of orca captivity and the devastating consequences of prioritizing entertainment over animal welfare. But amidst the controversy and the heartbreak, it's crucial to remember Kelty. She was more than just a victim. She was a vibrant, passionate young woman with a deep love for marine life and a bright future ahead of her. Her death, though undeniably tragic, inadvertently sparked a movement, forcing the world to confront the ethical implications of keeping these magnificent creatures in captivity. Kelty's legacy is one of change. Her story serves as a stark reminder of the inherent risks involved in confining apex predators and the profound impact that captivity has on their well-being. It is a call to action to advocate for the protection of orcas and other marine animals in their natural habitats. Let us remember Kelty not just as a victim of a tragic accident, but as a catalyst for change. Let her story inspire us to advocate for a future where orcas are free to roam the oceans, where their intelligence and complex social structures are respected, and where no other human life is lost in the name of entertainment. we must continue to support organizations working to protect wild orca populations, fight against captivity, and educate the public about the importance of respecting and conserving our oceans. Let her name be a reminder that silence is complicity, and that the fight for a more compassionate world for all creatures must continue.